everybody. I'm Mitzi Perdue, and I'm just as honored as I can be to be part of this program. I'm the author of a book called Relentless. It's the story about Mark Victor Hansen. You probably know about him, even if the name isn't familiar, because he's the co-author of Chicken Soup for the Soul. And what he's really famous for is he's such a mentor, such an inspirational person, that his book, the Chicken Soup for the Soul series, has gotten him into the Guinness Book of World Records for selling 500 million books. Is that cool or what?
So,
And to continue introducing myself, I've been a writer all my life. I've written several biographies, and when I got to know Mark Victor Hansen, boy, oh boy, the chance to write his biography, I just couldn't think of anything more exciting.
that's great. He sounds like a really interesting person. So, can you describe your purpose in writing Relentless, and what do you hope readers take away from reading your work?
Aha. Yeah, I did have a purpose in writing it. I have a theory that the greatest gift one human being can give another is inspiration. And here's why. Inspiration sort of gives you vision of, where you want to be, but it also gives you the energy to get there. And I thought Mark Victor Hansen is the most inspirational person I've ever come across. And I thought, wouldn't it be almost a service, in addition to being fun to do, to share some of his wisdom and some of his insights? And so my hope was, well, one of my goals for people, and this is really presumptuous of me, but here goes. If I could wave a magic wand and make the world a better place, which it's not given me to do, but, why not hope? My hope for everybody is that they get to be all they can be. And part of what it takes to get there is inspiration. And in my book on Mark Victor Hansen, I tell stories from his life, but I also tell ways that people can apply his learnings to their own life. And so my hope is that everybody who reads it gets a little bit farther along the road of being all they want to be and all they can be.
That sounds really beautiful. Yeah, that's really important. So, from the book itself, what is your favorite story, aspect, or general idea?
I do have a favorite, although that's a little hard because he's just full of really great stories. But I guess the one that personally excited me most, and it has a lot to do with why I made the title Relentless. But he's in Relentless and everything. But here's, good Lord, I don't know, you ought to be, what I'm about to describe, you ought to be able to stuff and put in a museum as an example of somebody who doesn't give up. I don't mean put him in a museum, I mean put the idea in a museum. And it's this: when he had the idea with his co-author Jack Canfield for writing the book Chicken Soup for the Soul, he knew it was a good book. He knew that he had fabulous stories. He really believed in it. But guess what? Nobody else did. I mean, Jack Canfield agreed with it, but after they had written the book, they went to 143 different publishers, every one of which turned it down. And it's even a little worse than that, because at one point they hired a real high-priced super duper agent who was going to help them get the book sold. And a few months into it, he did something that pretty much never happens. The agent fired Mark and Jack Canfield, saying, this book will never sell. I just can't put any more time into it. And as I said, the title of the book is Relentless, and it's in part because of the story that I'm sharing right now. It seems to me that anybody else that I know of, including me, would have given up before you got to 143 different turndowns. When he finally, after, could have been a year and a half of just endless turndowns, they finally came across a guy who was willing to take a chance on it. And he said, this guy his name was Vexos. And Vexos said, I really like the book. I really like the stories. I don't think I'm going to make any money out of it, but I like the stories, and I'll give it a try. It'll be a miracle if we sell 20,000. Little did he know that it was going to get everybody associated with publishing it and writing it into the Guinness Book of World Records for selling more nonfiction books than anybody else had up to then, and I think still. But can you even imagine the relentlessness of not getting up after 143 turn downs? And I asked Mark, and it's part of the story, where did you get the backbone, the courage, the strength to not get discouraged? And he said that he and Jack Canfield, they agreed that they believed in what they were doing. They believed it was a great book. And they had sort of an agreement with each other that whenever they'd get another turn down, that they'd say to themselves, next, and just move on. And look where it got them. In fact, I'll even explain where it got them. Besides selling 500 million books, and that means a lot of really nice royalties, they were able to sell the name Chicken Soup for the Soul for somebody who wanted to use it and has been very successful using it for things like dog food and who knows what else. They could sell just the name Chicken Soup for the Soul for, wait for it, $63 million just for a name.
I mean, when something's creative, it's creative. Wow. That's wow, though. I mean, it really just takes one person, though, to believe in them, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And Vexos was sure a happy guy because he was a small kind of regional publisher. He had an approach to publishing, which was that he wasn't just in it for the money. He wanted to spread good ideas. Well, look at the reward he got for this.
Yeah, it's honestly just amazing to hear that. It's really relentless, like you're saying. It seems like that's the theme of this novel. So, I guess moving on towards your writing journey, what inspired you to writing biographies? Like you said, you've mentioned that this isn't the only one you've written.
Uh, I love the whole art form of biographies, including that from childhood. I loved to read biographies. And my interest in reading biographies is, personally, when I'm reading about Marie Curie or whoever, I'm always sort of thinking, what can I learn from them? And then when I became a published writer, which was early in my 20s, just the excitement of knowing that I could share ideas and just with words, and I didn't have to build a factory or invest millions of dollars. No, it's just what I could, type out and have an effect. I've loved my career as a writer.
Yeah, it sounds really rewarding. So, how has your formal education and familial background translated to your work?
Uh, let's see, my father was the co-founder and president of the Sheraton hotel chain. So I had an example of somebody who really thought big and who was very good at doing what Mark Victor Hansen's doing and what I recommend to everybody else, which is my father could dream big, think big, dream big, but that's not enough. That's only like a third of the way there. And I'm making that up. Maybe it's a tenth of the way there, but it's only part way there. What really matters is have the vision. You're not going to get anywhere huge without the vision, but learn to execute, learn what it takes to get from here to there. And I got to watch my father, I got to watch him build a hotel chain, 400 hotels at the time of his death, and he employed 20,000 people. And so I got little inklings of for my own life about the importance of persevering, the importance of dreaming big, and the importance of not just thinking about it, but putting it into action, figuring out how to get from here to there. All right, so you asked about my family background and how that influenced me. Another big influence was from my mother. My mother was, she was from West Virginia. My father was from Boston. And it was a real case of opposites attract because my father was very kind of intellectual and cerebral and, the facts man, get me the facts. Mother, on the other hand, was, I think, the most gracious, caring, warm, concerned person that I'll ever meet. And she was just the perfect hostess, warm Southern belle, just kind of, my father really didn't belong in the hospitality industry because, he was sort of a cold New Englander, but because of his marriage, it all worked. I don't think father would have been a successful hotel man if he didn't have a wife who was the world's most gracious hostess. And mother was a huge believer in what she called put back in the bucket. Her view was that your real happiness comes from giving, not from taking. And father told me that the greatest pleasure his money ever gave him was in giving it away. So I was brought up with a pretty strong ethic of give back. And so all my writing, by the way, although I am a biographer and I love that art form, for most of my career, I've been a syndicated columnist. And I'd write on, for almost 20 years, I had a syndicated column on the environment for Scripps Howard. And there was a period, when I was the most widely syndicated environmental writer in the country. Yay! But I'm thinking about this as I speak it, but looking back in my life, I kind of think that all my writing was with the goal of giving people useful information that, might help them, would be useful. It could save them time, money, nutrition, relationships. I always wanted in my writing to give something useful. And by the way, I didn't have to think up the useful things myself. My MO, my way of going about it, was I would interview people who had a lot to offer and then, ask them for tips and ideas. So I was sort of a conduit for the ideas of, I think, some pretty neat people.
Yeah, it sounds like you've touched a lot of lives in all your different arenas. And you mentioned that the royalties from your book will be going to a crowdfunding effort for mine clearing in Ukraine, which is such a noble cause. Can you tell us more about that, basing off of that?
I'd love to. Thank you for asking, because that's where my heart and soul is right now. I'm 81 years old. Please look surprised. Thank you. Mission accomplished. Okay, at 81, I really want to use the time that's left to me, and I hope it's a long time, but who knows? I'd like to use the time that's left to me to do what, to my mind, seems the biggest results for the amount of effort. And with Ukraine right now, I've heard estimates that 10% of the land has landmines in it. Now, landmines, the horror of them is hard to imagine, but I'll just give an example. The Russian invaders would do things like, in a children's playground, they'd leave things that look like toys or like an oak leaf or something. And unless you're looking for it, you don't realize that it's a landmine, but if you step on it, your foot's going to blow off. Or another thing that they do on just an industrial scale is, I don't know that this is true. I heard it today and I'd like to check it further, but one source told me today that 40% of the agricultural land of Ukraine has been mined. And the Russians do this in just such an evil way. They've got this truck that has 50 rockets on it, and each rocket has, say, 75 landmines inside the rocket. So this truck can shoot landmines over agricultural property, maybe 10 miles away, because it's fired by a rocket. That farmland, maybe 100 acres of it, can have 3,500 landmines on it. And that means that the farmer, he, possibly she, but the farmer cannot farm that land without risking having their tractor blow up or themselves be killed. And this is catastrophic for the for the farmer, he's probably going to go bankrupt. He'll be destitute because if you can't farm your land, what do you do? I mean, not everybody's going destitute, but it's, losing your ability to make a living is horrible. Even worse might be if you're killed trying to do it. But it's also bad for Ukraine because a lot of the income that keeps the country going is agricultural products. And then, we're going from the individual level to the country level. Let's go to the world level now. There are a number of major countries that depend on grain from Ukraine to survive. Some of the African countries, Bangladesh, certainly Egypt. I mean, they may be facing famine if we don't get the mines cleared. Okay, that's the bad, terrible, awful news. Now the good news. There's an organization, it's called Halo Trust. It's been around for, since 1998 at least, possibly a year earlier. But anyway, so they've been in business a long time and they know what they're doing. And they, right at this moment, have 500 people in Ukraine clearing mines. And that means, people who can get their livelihood back, people who don't have to worry about their children in a playground getting a foot blown off. The amount of good they do is just mind-boggling. So I decided that the royalties from my book, Relentless, anybody who buys Relentless, you're going to help with this project. All of it's going to humanitarian relief in Ukraine. And then on top of that, I've started a crowdfunding effort. And the way to get to it is www.DonorSee. So imagine that you're a donor and you can see something. So it's, see is in vision, DonorSee.com.
Yeah, we'll put it in the video description for people watching.
Oh, thank you. Okay, DonorSee.com/Ukraine. And almost $100,000 has already been committed from people who support this. And if we can get to 300,000, that will support 18 people for half a year, full-time landmine clearing. And then something super special. I mean, I think every part of it's wonderful, but among the wonderful parts is 95% of the people doing the landmine clearing are trained to do this, and they're women. And you might wonder, why do you want women landmine clearers? And the answer is, in a war-torn area, there are a lot of women whose husbands are in the front line, or maybe they're widows, and they really need income. And so they can have a job that they can feel very important and relatively safe because, an awful lot is known about how to clear landmines. In fact, I've been to Ukraine twice. I'm going to go a third time. And the third time is the Halo Trust has invited me to go through landmine clearing school. And there are layers of it. I mean, you can learn a little bit in a couple of days, or you can do a couple of weeks training, or you can do 9 months of training, depending on the dangerousness of the stuff they're going to have you do. And I'm going for the lowest level. And then it gets even better from my point of view. I mentioned this to some of my friends in the Kyiv region police, and they said, but Mitzi, we've got a landmine clearing school too. Would you like to come to that? And I said, of course, because I think it'd be really interesting to see how the police do it. They actually do the most dangerous. They come in right after a town is liberated. The soldiers move on because they want to go chase the invaders. And so it's the police who do kind of the most emergency landmine clearing. And then when they've taken it as far as works for them, they call in the Halo Trust that comes and gets rid of it all. So anyway, that's what I'm just so excited about, because every dollar that anybody donates, it's going to mean, a child who doesn't have a foot blown off, or somebody who can go back safely to their home. Or I'm also very interested in combating human trafficking. And landmine clearing even plays a role in that in a couple of ways. People who are vulnerable to being trafficked because they don't have an income, this can provide income. But it also means that when they return to their homes, they don't have to worry about being blown up.
Yeah, honestly, I'm learning a lot. I didn't even know that this was an issue. I've heard about Ukraine, but there's so many details that get lost. So it's important that you're spreading awareness and that you're taking a really active role in going to help yourself. Um,
Well, one of the super things about DonorSee, it's different from every other crowdfunding organization that I'm aware of, which is you get continuous, like weekly, if you want it. I mean, you sign up for it, but if you sign up for it, ta-da, you get me once a week because I'll be reporting on what it's like going to mine school. I'll report, the fascinating ways that they go about it, like bomb sniffing dogs, or let's see, drones that can detect mines, or they're even robot dogs. There's one called Spot that it walks like a dog, but it can sniff like a dog does explosives.
that's really interesting. There's so many things that like I had no idea about.
Well,
So
that's why I'm excited with DonorSee, because I get to tell these
you can tell
stories,
us.
and it's 2 minutes at a time. I mean, they only give me 2 minutes, but woohoo, you can say a lot in 2 minutes.
Yeah, so for people watching the video, it'll be in the video description, the page. Is there anything else you wanted to add about that?
Yes, please, please, please come, because if I'm making these videos, I really want to share them with people because they're upbeat stories. They're things, they're good people kind of undoing bad things. And I find it extremely uplifting.
It seems like even more inspiration. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you also mentioned that you're a columnist and you have like different literary publications. Can you describe a few of those for fans of Relentless that want to see more of your work and where they
Oh,
can
thank
find
you.
that?
Uh, I write a weekly column, well, it's close to weekly, a blog for Psychology Today, and this is on human trafficking. And again, it's not that I'm an expert myself, but I get to interview experts, and they can be like survivors. It can be people who run shelters. It can be psychologists who explain why the bad guys do it. It's endless. And then there's some pretty fascinating ways of combating trafficking. The other one that I write it's for the Association of Foreign Press Correspondents. I write their blog on mine clearing. And bless them, they feel that this is a global problem that's worth their attention. So I'm loving the chance to tell these stories. In fact, I live to tell stories. I think it must, I don't know where, but I love to share stories, especially if they're inspirational.
Yeah, I think you're a good storyteller. I can feel engagement. But I think it's like important to bring awareness to those topics for so many people who probably would have no otherwise idea. Um,
Yeah, and my theory is that my theory, I know this because I've talked with a lot of people who say, I really care about Ukraine. It's just awful what's happening. What can I do? Ta-da! Here's something you can do. Uh, Come to DonorSee.com/Ukraine. And one of the super things about this is I'm in contact with a lot of people in Ukraine because I've been there twice. I made some friends, and war situation, when you get close to somebody, it all happens faster, the closeness. I mean, I have people there that I love like family. Well, I love, oh, and I also get to write for Ukrainian newspapers. I mean, they're interested in what I as an American are saying about Ukraine. So they carry my stuff and they translate it into Ukrainian. Woohoo! Well, I'm going to get to tell people in Ukraine, and I can do it I've been on television, radio, and newspapers in Ukraine because they really like, a friend in need is a friend indeed. And the people I've come across in Ukraine just really value that an American is taking the mind clearing stuff to heart. Well, I will be able to tell them, hey, look how many Americans are supporting mind clearing. And that's going to be a shot in the arm for them. For them, meaning the Ukrainians.
Yeah, yeah, honestly. So moving towards writing again, what is your advice for aspiring writers? You've been giving lots of inspiration, but do you have anything specifically for those people who are trying to write their own book?
Totally. Let's see, I'll tell you my approach to writing, because in looking at my own life and then being friends with lots of writers, I have a theory, and it will apply to some of our audience and it won't apply to everybody. But a lot of people, you start and you don't finish. It's just a hazard of the occupation. So I have a way around that. My rule as a writer, whether I'm writing an article or a book, is that it simply has to be in two phases. One phase, the creative part, where you just get the story out and you probably, it's really crappy. It's no good whatsoever. But say you're writing a book. I've written 27 books. Every one of them, I use this approach. I don't allow myself to do any polishing until the content is there. And I make myself write. In my case, I aim for a couple of thousand words, but if you're a beginner writer, that might not be easy for you. I mean, go for 300, but every day write 300, and you just have to get them out. And here's what's going to happen. Some of it is absolute, total, complete CRAP and embarrasses you, but mixed in, when you have this discipline of just writing every day, you'll find some stuff that you'll think, oh my gosh, did I write that? That's better than I thought. And then the reason that I don't, for myself, and what I recommend for everybody else, is don't do any polishing until you've got the whole thing done. Because if you start polishing, I don't think you'll ever get done. Instead, get the whole thing from beginning to end. And so I get a first draft out. And if there's stuff that I don't know, like research, I'll make up something as a placeholder. Like, I don't know if it's 23,000 or 1,800 or whatever. I'll make up something and then I'll put a little question mark around it, reminding myself that, I made that up. Now I have to go look and find what it really is. So the first draft is just to get the material out there. The second draft, I'll go through it and maybe rearrange the story. Maybe, just kind of cut and paste, move it around so it's more logical. And in that second draft, I also will fill in all the blanks where I had these like placeholder places where I didn't know a date or a name or how something happened, or something where I had to do further research. Okay, once you've done your research and once you've got it in the best order you possibly can, or close, my next stage is, and it's the fun stage, the creative stage, it's putting it in the best writing that I know how. I mean, I'll use every rhetorical device that I can, like metaphors and similes and alliteration and suspense and quotes, and just use everything. The first two drafts, they really are, I wouldn't want anybody to see them because they're little nuggets that are okay, but they're not polished. They're crummy. But by the third one, I draw on every bit of knowledge that I have about good writing. And I'll also do things like, I want to make sure that it's easy to understand, that if I use a complicated word, that I explain it. My goal is to be accessible to everybody. I don't want to be a snobby writer. I want to be a writer that is there to help you. Okay, so the third one is I create the best literary writing that I can, and not snobby writing, but easy to understand and fun to read. That's the goal. So something that you hope jumps off the page, and lots of quotations do that, lots of stories. So that's the third stage, is polishing it. The fourth stage, I send it out to some people I respect. People who won't just say, oh, Mitzi, that's wonderful. People will say, oh, you lost me there, or that didn't make sense, or I just struggled over that paragraph, whatever, or that metaphor doesn't work for me. I've never heard of, you compare it to so-and-so and I've never heard of so-and-so. So Ideally, there are about 5 people. Maybe your mom is one. Maybe your best friend is one. Just somebody who is sort of a stand-in for a real reader. And I asked them, at what point did I lose you? At what point was it hard to understand? At what point was it repetitive? And I asked them, I'm okay with hearing what's right with it. Yay. But what I really want to know is what's wrong with it. So the 4th draft, there are 5 drafts. The 4th draft is putting together all the suggestions. And I don't follow everybody's suggestion. I follow a lot of them, but at some point I have to consider that, I'm a professional writer. I've got to trust my own judgment as well. So it's kind of a balance between respecting other people's opinion and then respecting my own opinion as well. I mean, it's my name that's going to be on it. And when I put all that together, we're at the 5th draft, and the 5th draft is what I submit to a publisher.
Wow, that's a very nice detailed response. It gives a clear direction of your writing process. I think there's a lot of good advice in that, especially the taking constructive criticism and not just expecting a yes man. So
somebody who tells you it's wonderful, they're not helping you.
Yeah, that's true.
And you might even tell people ahead of time, I'd love to hear that it's wonderful, but if you want to really help me, tell me where it wasn't clear to you, where it was boring, or even where, gosh, you were too mean. That happens.
Yeah. So those are all the questions that I had for you. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we close?
No, I'm happy as can be with talking, because you sure asked me the questions that got me going.
Well, that's great. So thank you, Mitzi, for taking the time to talk with me today. And for those of you who are watching the video, if you haven't already, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. The links to DonorSee and Mitzi's work will be in the video description. And I'll see you guys next week.